Welcome, bienvenidos to the Palante Nonprofits podcast. Today, I'm so honored to spotlight the beautiful story of Mama Yata, who founded Melanin Mothers Meet. She's a postpartum empowerment strategist, herbalist, and spiritual healer who's created an amazing resource of education, sanctuary of wellness, and support for Black mothers. In the US, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. And because of that, Melanin Mothers offers something revolutionary, culturally grounded space for Black mothers to connect, heal, and thrive. I actually met Mama Yara because I had the pleasure of working with her during a grant that she received. And I'm super inspired by all of the work that she does and the work that Melanin Mothers Meet has been able to do in her community. And before we get started with our questions, Mama Yara, can you tell me a little bit more about you?
Sure. Yes. So I am Mama Yata, and I am the owner and founder of Melanin Mothers Meet. We are a nonprofit here in Tallahassee, Florida, and we do services nationwide, virtually, of course. We are focused on postpartum support as well as breastfeeding experiences, and so we're super excited to be here with Dr. Andrea.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. Let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to create Melanin Mothers Me, and what were those early steps like for you in the beginning of forming a nonprofit?
Oh my goodness. Well, it definitely started with passion, a little bit of pain, but after my own two empowering home birth experiences and the overwhelming love and support I received during my postpartum, for my second delivery, I realized kind of like rest and joy and care wasn't the norm for most Black mothers. And a lot of moms were isolated, unsupported, and they suffered in silence. And I wanted to change that narrative, starting with me. And just kind of started. I held a interest meeting at a bookstore back in 2016, right after I had my daughter at home. And moms who were pregnant came, postpartum, parenting toddlers, and we just simply held space. And those early gatherings became healing circles, conferences, workshops, and of course, virtual meetups, and eventually the foundation of a full nonprofit rooted in ancestral care, sisterhood, family, and advocacy. Super exciting.
I love that. And I love that the pain, because opening a nonprofit is painful. I think I talk a lot about that with my audience, but you were lucky enough to receive a funding, very well deserved, of course, but funding is difficult to come by. Can you walk us through the process of securing that first major funding? What surprised you the most, either positively or negatively, about that experience?
Yes, well, securing our first major funding was truly humbling and affirming. We were one of only three organizations in Florida awarded the funding from Center for Thriving Communities out of Jacksonville, Florida. And it felt like a door had opened, but not without effort. Writing the grant, sharing our data, and telling our story took hours of labor. Oh my gosh, that should be like a whole nother podcast. But what surprised me the most was how little Black maternal health work is truly understood or funded, unless you advocate very boldly, right? But what it uplifted me was the people, the local partners, doulas, and even county leaders who stood up and said, yes, this matters through letters of interest. And that funding allowed us to launch our 8-week postpartum empowerment program and build deeper roots in the community. And we cannot forget about the Dr. Andrea, because she got me through lots and lots of nights with that grant. So shout out to you.
Yeah. No, I think, when it comes to funding, and I think you heard me say this, more money, more problems, and being
Mhm.
prepared for it. And people don't there are strings attached with all of the money in the nonprofit sector. And you are, a one-woman show. You do have a support system and a team, but they all do this voluntarily. And I think, through this funding, I believe you were one of the few getting paid aside from some contracting work for the program. But like, they would invoice hours, but like they also gave so much of their time and their support outside of it because funding is limited. It was a very
Mhm.
specific grant. It was very specific to the things that we're gonna do, and super proud that you did it. But can we, before I move on to the next question, Mama Yada, can we talk a little bit about uh, why did it feel so scary? Like go a little bit into like you mentioned data. Like,
Mhm.
did you not know that they were gonna ask for so much?
Well, before receiving the grant, I was able to do the work that I do without funding for what it was 8 years because we were 9 years this year. So it was 8 years because the grant was last year. So for 8 years, I was like in the dark about data and research and all of the things. And I'm just over here doing this work because I love it and it needs to be done. And I didn't need a fiscal year or a budget to figure out what I was going to do next. I just knew that next door there was a mom and she needs my help. So and so when the actual grant got here and they were like, oh, data, oh, research. And I was kind of salty too, because I was like, wait a minute, I'm in my community and you all work for, organizations that have data and research, and nobody told me anything. They could have been doing data and research with me for the last 8 years. Can you imagine? So, but no, I just took it to the chin, and now I'm always doing surveys and things of that nature. But the biggest, I guess, like to wrap around to your question again, the biggest challenge too was that the population that I was serving, they were not really concerned with data and surveys. They didn't like it at all. So it's just like, how do we speak to this population without um, dreading them with all of the paperwork?
Yeah, and totally fair because working with your funder, like they were so gracious and they provided
Yes,
so much education and support. And
yes,
but that's just, it's at the same time they have guidelines and rules to follow to the people who
mm,
give this money. And I think understanding that pipeline was really important when I came to work with you. And
mm.
you did it. Would you say that it changes the way that you worked a little bit?
Oh yeah,
You,
I'm doing surveys with every little thing now. Survey, survey
yeah.
here, survey there, survey for you, survey for everyone.
Oh, I love that. Everyone gets a survey, right?
Everyone gets a survey. QR
But
code.
I remember, when I came in and I remember there are things that how do you measure the joy or the support? You
Hmm.
can. It's really hard to measure what your one visit, to that mom meant or anything. So you have to use other like quantitative and qualitative measures to be able to validate that on paper. And
Hmm.
this goes into my next question because I want the listeners to understand what your day to day looks like and what you go and do when you host these workshops. Melanin Mothers Meet offers very specific and powerful kind of support. Share a little bit about what that looks like for you. You mentioned workshops. So, like, what are you doing there? What you mentioned that moms reach out to you. Like, what are they reaching out about?
Yeah, so as of right now, a typical week with M3 includes our postpartum pop-up virtual session. We do that every third Monday. And then we have ongoing one-on-one postpartum empowerment strategy sessions because I am a postpartum empowerment strategist. So I have like referrals for moms to come and we speak online and we talk about their postpartum support plan, and I give them ideas for boundaries for how to ask for help from their community. I have a template that I offer to moms for their baby showers so that if they want to have their guests sign up for the postpartum support, they can write out the day and time that they can come, and what they can offer. So whether it's food or cleaning or anything of that nature, anything to relieve the stress, picking up the older children, anything to relieve the stress of the mom. It's, very practical and very simple. Yeah, I think it's overlooked so much. So that's
Oh
another thing
my
that we
God.
do. And then
I
we
love
have
that.
hmm and we have
Continue.
the Black Maternal Health Exchange events. We've been doing those. We had one April 5th. We had two speakers, one who had 9 pregnancy losses, and she finally had a baby after the ninth loss. And then we had a mom on there who had a son that committed suicide as an adult. And, it was really powerful to listen to their stories because it wasn't like they were grieving to the point where they were done with life. This kind of birthed something else from them, which created their nonprofit organizations themselves to go and help the next person so that they can be of light for anyone. So yeah, and moms, what was I had like the Refuge House would call me or any other organization like, hey, we have a mom, could you help her out? And I would provide that mom with different resources in the community. I'm actually working with a couple moms right now. One specifically, she's actually pregnant right now. She has 6 other children. She just moved down here from up north, and she's looking for her own way. And so, we've met up at the park, her and my children, and I've given her resources, and she's really ambitious. So she's, tackling all the resources that I'm giving her, for her, the children. So it's just really special to be like in the community to be able to provide those types of things. And, even though you don't get paid to do it, it's still some type of joy that helps you just to keep going.
Yeah, well, and you should get paid to do it. So if anybody leaves with
Absolutely.
anything right now, is go to their website and please donate. Because I will
Please.
also say, when we talk about grassroots organizations, you are the definition of it. It's led by people who have that kind of lived experience and who looks like them and who can speak to what their actual needs are. Because sometimes when we look at these bigger programs and systems, they don't understand. They'll be like, "Oh yes, come to the group, but you can't bring your other kids." And like caretaking is expensive, and
Hmm.
like so the fact that you incorporate their family and what it looks like when they meet with you, when they talk to you, I think is such an important definition of what being grassroots truly means. Like, come get your resources. You don't have to meet me at this office with white walls. It's like, let's go to the park, let's hang out, let's just
Hmm.
chat. I love the whole template resource of like I'm a mom of three, as you know, Mama Yata, and like we
Hmm.
had to reschedule sometimes because, like a kid, they called me at school and they a kid did something, I had to go pick them up, or like,
Yeah.
hey, I remember your kids are super involved, and it's like, oh, they have to go to this class and or
Hmm.
and you homeschool them, and I remember having to be
Hmm.
so flexible. And
Yeah.
I remember having to be, one of the things I really enjoyed is like we would chat Saturday mornings, and yes, to your point, it's hard, but like helping, leaders like you who are doing the work on the ground is really what makes, I would say, my donation or anybody's donation that's listening in really move forward, because you're taking the call when nobody else is.
Yeah.
You're doing it, there's no conditions too, right? You sign up for, you have to get benefits, WIC or whatever, and it's like you have to go through these appointment systems, go to their place of business, but like you're meeting them where they are. And I think that's a
Hmm.
really important definition of what it means to be a true like grassroots organization. And so, definitely want to highlight the work that you've been doing in the community. But I'm gonna switch it up. I'm actually gonna change this question because I want to get back to like, would you do it all over again? Like being a nonprofit. I get asked a lot, like, should you become a nonprofit? When to your point, you've been doing it without funding and without anything out of the goodness of your heart. Like, would you do all of that again?
Would I do it all again? Yes, I would do it all again with a different perspective, with
Mm-hmm.
a different, knowledge, with different knowledge. And I would be a little bit more strategic with how I would do things. And then also a lot of how Melanin Mothers Meet was created was based off of the unknown, not knowing what's next, just doing and then, oh, fixing it later, because it's like I didn't know, but yeah, I would definitely do it again. I would just be more strategic, have a little bit more knowledge about NPOs and come out with a different perspective. Yeah.
I love that. I want to make sure you have time to talk a little bit about, a little more about my management. So before you tell our listeners how they can donate to you, volunteer for you, or maybe seek their services, right? I know I have a lot of moms and people that can identify with some of the things you said. Can you tell me what is one moment, big or small, that even, oh my God, that I know you were challenged when you received this big grant, and I want to tell our listeners it was a big grant. It was about $80,000, so it required a lot of responsibility. What is one moment, big or small, that reminded you why you did that work?
Oh man. I get messages from moms all the time just about why they love M3 and just how I've taken them personally out of a dark spot just from encouraging words. And a lot of times moms just really need somebody to talk to. Like they just want somebody to hear them. And because there's not lots of money, that's usually where my help begins and ends because it's just like, okay, let's have this conversation. What's going on, girl? What can I do? And a little advice here and there goes a long way for a mom. Resources, sending flyers that connect to maybe food distributions or maybe there's a kid event going on the weekend that they can take their other children to, or maybe it's an organization, a mentoring organization for their older children. Or maybe there's a community baby shower going on that they can go to get resources from. So, I mean, there's so many things, but one is in particular, there was a mom, she sent me a picture of her and her baby. And she said, because of you, I didn't feel invisible. And of course, I cried like really big, snotty tears. So, they
Yeah.
just kind of like stopped me in my tracks. And I was just like smiling. And, it's not always like the big events, the conferences and all of the, workshops or the funding announcements, but it's more like the quiet confirmations that tell me that
Yeah.
the work is needed. And every time
Yeah.
a mom breathes easier, every time a dad joins our conversation, every time a youth says, I want to help my mom more, I'm kind of reminded why M3 exists and because of this sacred work. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of it. And then actually another thing that we're doing right now, actually it's Thursday, I teach classes. I teach classes online for students and I have a Black Maternal Health edition that I'm teaching with my Principles of Problem Solving curriculum. And so my high school students are going to have a Black Maternal Health youth panel on Thursday. I'm really excited about that. But, just really involving the youth more so that they can be prepared once they become adults and they don't have to be in the dark about what's going on with maternal health, little
Oh,
boys
I love
and little
that.
girls.
Yeah. No,
Hmm.
and I think, we do need a whole episode, I think, on like the data and all of the research you had to do and deliver. Would you say, and then I promise we'll close off, looking back at it though, like, are you able now to talk to other funders or other people when they ask, like, are you able to talk more to that kind of data? Because I remember, um, we were able to find like how many people were attending online or how many people were
Hmm.
reaching out to you, and in the surveys, like the
Hmm.
before and after they did the program. So like, do you think that it increased like your confidence in speaking to people about the work you do?
Yes, I feel a lot more intelligent speaking toward, even though I still need a lot more help. I still feel, a lot more involved in the data now. And I'm just
Yeah.
continuing to be consistent, learning more things. I participate in research workshops and work groups and different committees just so that I can stay fresh and clear on data. So yes,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Mama Yata, for sharing. They can find you on Instagram, right? Our listeners, as well as on melaninmothersmeet.com.
Mm-hmm.
And what is your ID handle, your Instagram handle?
Yeah, so Instagram, you can find me at Melanin Mothers Meet underscore M3. And you can also find me on LinkedIn under Trishay Mama Yata Young. That's Trishay, quotations, Mama Yata, and then Young. And then you can also find me on Facebook under Melanin Mothers Meet M3. And the website is www.melaninmothersmeet.com. And please
Yes,
don't
I
forget
love
to
that for
donate.
you. I love that for you. Yes, don't forget to donate, but also reach out to her if you know. I one of the things I think you're a powerful leader in grassroots organizing and the way that you deliver to the community, but I do have to have you to go deeper into the data and all of the things we did. So essentially, I was her coach. I was hired to help her through all of the data as well as the reporting for funding because she did have to report on the budget and how it was spent. And I think, if there's anything I do want you to get from this episode is that it can be done. It does put surveys on everything now, no matter how small or little you work through, if you all you do is feed the homeless every Saturday, see if you can bring one of those happy face, down face buttons and just record how many people are click the happy because like data is really important. It's important to validate why you get funding, but gives you a lot to talk about and confidence. So, Amanda,
Mm,
thank you for sharing your journey, your commitment
thank
to
you.
healing, communities, especially because, as a mom, oh my God, I love that you have actionable things. So not only do you share advice, but actionable templates to help them do the next thing. I'm super rooted in that. And, just know that Melanin Mothers Me is more than a nonprofit. If this moved you or challenged you in any way, just want to remind you to follow and support Melanin Mothers Meet. And until next time, which I hope to have you, Mama Yana, so we can explore data more.
Yes,
Thank you so much for listening.
thank you.